Okay, so I surveyed some of my friends in my classes, and the first thing I asked them was how long it took for them to get to school one way. Of the 74 people who responded, 23 said that it took less than 15 minutes, 25 said that it took them anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes, 13 said 30 to 45 minutes, 11 said 45 to 60 minutes, and 2 people said that it took over 60 minutes to get to school. More importantly though, I also asked them how they got to school. Now take a look at this. For people who take less than 30 minutes, the most popular answer was by car, as you can see in the yellow region over here. For those who take more than 30, the overwhelming majority said that they use public transit. In fact, of the 26 people who are in this category, there's only one person who used some sort of other mean of transportation, and that was by walking. Kind of sucks for these guys, doesn't it? In total, that's 1 to over 2 hours every day being spent on the road. Imagine all the time you could spend sleeping, or studying, or working out. So clearly, for all my friends in this category, what's the solution to their problem? Simple. You buy a car. And yeah, that would solve their problem. But low-key, owning a car is kind of expensive. You gotta pay for the car, and then there's also gas, there's insurance, maintenance, fees, tickets, and really beyond that, it's important to consider the infrastructure that we build for cars as well. Edmonton's road network is valued at $9.6 billion, and every year, the city spends tens of millions building and repairing existing roads. But what else can you do? It's almost impossible to live in Canada without owning a car. How else are you supposed to go to work, to go grocery shopping, to go to the movie theater? Chapter 1, what is sprawl? For centuries, places were designed all around the world such that everyone had what they needed within walking distance. Streets and public spaces were designed like an outdoor room, and there were places that felt comfortable to be in and enjoyable to walk in. There was a mix of uses. Very typically, there would be commercial properties on the ground floor, and then offices and apartments above. These properties were flexible, and they could change depending on how an area evolved over time. An office might turn into a house, a shop might turn into an office. There's an enemy in this story, and that is sprawl. Up until World War II, American and Canadian cities were just as dense and compact as cities found anywhere else. After the war, America was a prosperous country, and with the decreasing cost of automobiles, it seemed possible that every American could own their own house on their own piece of land with a beautiful big lawn. Combine that possibility with ideals of freedom and independence, and thus began the American dream. Suburban development became so closely linked with these ideals that the idea that it was what led to prosperity started to become taken as a fact. As suburban areas grew, cities expanded in geographic size faster than they grew in population, creating large metropolitan areas of low population densities interconnected by roads. Sprawl doesn't have a specific definition. However, it is characterized by a few things. Firstly, is single-use zoning. Zoning dictates what is allowed to be built in what area. The desire for these separate single-family homes in young cities paved the way for the development of different buildings to be separated from each other. Cities are split into sections, with exclusively houses take up one section, exclusively businesses take up another, and exclusively office spaces take up another. This separation makes it so that locations that are important in our daily lives are located far away from each other. This is just a screenshot of where we are right now from Google Maps, and you can see very clearly the distinction between the houses and the big box stores. Number 2 is isolation. Although many cities that have problems with sprawl occur in low population density, high density sprawl is also something that can occur. Many large cities in China encounter the same problems as North American suburbs. Getting around and accessing services is still a struggle because everything is organized into super blocks. You still need to travel far to get to work, to buy groceries, to go shopping, etc. 3, a lack of walkability. These factors are determined first by how far things are from each other, but also by the quality and the intentions of the infrastructure. Many places aren't a pleasant place to walk to because people are not meant to be walking to them. If you think about Calgary Trail, there aren't any sidewalks to get around on, and stores are linked together and connected behind a massive sea of parking. The only reasonable way to get to these places is by automobile. Now that we know what sprawl is, so what? What makes sprawl bad, and why should it be undesirable? Firstly, And this is taking me back to the survey at the very beginning. Let's take a look at commute times and traffic. This is Houston, Texas, and with a metropolitan population of over 7 million, it is what I believe to be the epitome of the worst of sprawl. Connecting Houston's western suburbs to the city's downtown is the Katy Freeway. Serving 219,000 vehicles daily in Texas, it spans 26 lanes at its widest point. It wasn't always this big. When it was first built in the 1960s, it had 6 lanes in most places. As suburbs and office spaces grew around Houston, it suffered from terrible traffic congestion, and in order to accommodate the growing population, the city spent billions of dollars expanding the freeway. But traffic didn't get any better. In fact, it got worse. As the city continued to add more lanes, more people started using the road. The car-centric design that Houston relied on has prevented the development of public transportation, and it made it stuck with this atrocity. This is Amsterdam in the Netherlands. Here, people love biking. In fact, they love it so much that the Netherlands are the only country in the world with more bikes than there are people. People here love biking because it's convenient, and all the money that wasn't spent on building giant freeways was spent on improving infrastructure for other modes of transportation. Amsterdam is also densely populated, and commercial and residential properties are mixed, meaning that you never need to go far to get where you need to go. Biking is great for cyclists because they don't have to pay all the costs of owning a car in order to function normally in their society. It's also great for drivers who experience less traffic and congestion on the road. The Netherlands consistently ranks at or near the top in terms of driver satisfaction, and this, ironically, is due to their focus on other means of transportation. A common method of getting to work is biking to a parking garage and then using the city's highly sophisticated metro system to get to a station and then using your second bike to get to your destination. We have parking rides here in Edmonton too. The difference being that instead, parking costs $50 a month and you need to walk through a big ugly dirt parking lot. Traffic is something that everyone hates, so obviously people are trying to propose solutions. Some have suggested self-driving cars and extra smart traffic lights. Elon Musk too got tired of waiting in traffic, and his solution was for us to create a massive network of hundreds of tunnels under our cities for cars to travel through. This is supposed to be our future. Seriously, are you kidding me? It's terrible. Maybe you can look at the picture and think it's kind of cool, but imagine rush hour traffic with hundreds of cars being stuck in these little tubes. What would you do if an accident occurred? No. If we want to solve traffic, we need to move away from the car-centric ideals that we've built our cities on these past years. If we want the places we live in to be pleasant today and sustainable for the future, we need to fundamentally change how we live. Reason number 2 is the environment. It is simple. The less you drive, the less greenhouse gases are released into the atmosphere. In Canada, the transportation sector is responsible for 27% of greenhouse gas emissions. And light-duty vehicles such as cars, vans, and small trucks account for roughly half of that total. Cities that don't depend as much on cars will have obviously less emissions in that regard. In 2010, Americans drove for 85% of their daily trips, compared to 50 to 65% car trip shares in Europe. For trips under 1 mile, Americans drove almost 70% of the time, while Europeans made 70% of their short trips by bicycle, foot, or public transit. If we can prioritize these other modes of transportation for smaller, everyday errands, we can greatly reduce our carbon footprint. Thirdly, sprawl and car-centric city design makes small trips require a lot of effort. The way we zone out and separate spaces for businesses makes most stores and other services too far to walk to. As a consequence, stores in North America also tend to be bigger, as they're intended to serve more people, and people who come typically buy in larger quantities. Even if you live nearby, say, a grocery store, the long walk through the parking lot, along the side of the building, and up to the entrance discourages traveling to it in any way except by car. I'm not trying to cherry pick these photos either. In fact, I encourage you, once you get home, if you go over Google Maps and you go over Street View, in almost all parts over Amsterdam and Edmonton, the scenes that you see will be pretty similar to the pictures that you see up here. This is why people go to vacation in Amsterdam and not in Edmonton. In the Netherlands, many small grocery stores, butchers, markets, and bakers are woven into the urban fabric so that no matter where you are, you're only a short walk away from somewhere you can buy fresh food. Most people prefer to make small trips to buy food for the next day or the next few days, rather than large fortnightly shopping trips by car. By not setting shops back behind a sea of parking, grocery shopping is seen as a quick 10-minute in and out, perhaps even on the way home from work, as opposed to a planned event out of your weekend. This is different from Canada, where shopping is often an ordeal that takes up to numerous hours out of your weekend. As much as I love Costco, the concept of driving to the edge of town, finding a parking spot in the huge lot, buying things massively in bulk, and waiting in huge checkout lines is pretty messed up. When you buy small quantities of groceries more often, you end up eating fresher food, and you end up wasting less of it. These big box stores are largely the reason why Canada and the US waste some of the most food in the world. We're in Edmonton. Going to the farmer's market to buy fresh fruit is a novelty that you get to experience once a week. In places outside of the US and Canada, it's what people do every day. Take a look at this neighborhood in Austin, Texas. It's located beside a highway and nothing else. If you want to buy groceries here, you're going to need to start up your car and drive 5 kilometers down that road. That's crazy. Oh, well, you might say that's America, you know, things are different over there. This is Cameron Heights in Edmonton. And if you have the same problem over here, your options are to walk 30 minutes down a ravine, up through Wedgewood Heights, and all the way up into co-ops, or drive through the Hendon. Imagine getting stuck in rush hour traffic because you forgot to buy bananas. It's pretty insulting that we have to pay $1 million for a house that doesn't even have the luxury of not being located next to only a freeway. The last, least evidence-based, and possibly most important reason to stop sprawl is because it's boring. It's so boring. It creates places we don't want to be, and it makes our communities so much less interesting. This is Plank Road in Fredericksburg, Virginia, filled with gas stations, fast food chains, mid-market hotels, big box stores, and lots of parking. It's a type of road that you're probably quite familiar with. It's big, it's wide, and although it's technically possible to walk here, it'd have to be pretty insane to want to walk through this place. Also, this is not actually Plank Road in Fredericksburg, Virginia. Yup, I lied. This is Plank Road, but this is in Stockbridge, Georgia, Portland, Maine, Edson, Alberta, and Brampton, Ontario. From mountains to deserts to forests, this vast landscape of the North American continent somehow has a ubiquitous consistency wherever you go. Would it be technically more efficient to build a big box store on a piece of land rather than create a complicated street of local businesses? Well, yes, it's quite easy to fill a space with a McDonald's or a Walmart because it's already been done thousands of times. But to quote Wendover Productions, when that roadside hotel in Chiloquin, Oregon has the exact same floor plan as the one in Webb City, Missouri, the majority of the benefit is experienced by the owners who are able to set up an equally profitable business for less. Meanwhile, the majority of the cost is experienced by those living in Chiloquin who experience the built-up environment of an area as unique as Oregon's endless wilderness, adapted into the epitome of any town USA. Although building what's most efficient might be the easiest thing to do, that shouldn't be the point. City design dictates every aspect of our lives. It determines how we live, how we work, how we play. A good place to live in is a place that feels good to be in. And this is not that place. There is beauty in a little bit of chaos, a little less government regulation. Community and integration creates interestingness. The alleyways of Taipei certainly aren't anything exceptional logistically, but they're just cool. So this brings us to chapter 3. What can we do? How can we fix this problem? 1. Increase density. Create alternative forms of housing that fit more people and remove ourselves from the tradition of building only single-family homes. More people in an area means more essential services within a reasonable range, as well as more tax dollars for a smaller area to build higher quality infrastructure. Nicer roads, nicer sidewalks, more public transportation. 2. Mix. Create mixed-use neighborhoods where an office can become a store and a home can become an office. Allow for interaction to occur in our neighborhoods. Allow for communication, allow for connection. This is what will make where we live interesting and lively. Also, mixed incomes, mixed age groups. Eliminate the economic enclaves that our different levels of suburbs have created today. 3. Integrate. Integrate essential stores and services into the urban fabric. Instead of a few big stores, have many small shops. Remove the reign of the big box and help local businesses prosper. Make it so that everyone can access a service within walking distance. And this brings me to number 4. Walk. Design walkable streets in human scale not car-scale neighborhoods. Make going on foot the most reasonable way to buy your groceries. Take advantage of the higher tax revenue to area proportion to make places that people actually want to be in. And finally, number 5, ride. Develop high-quality transit that can get you where you need to go. Invest in LRT stations that are convenient, fast, and safe enough to not have to be scared for your life. Build bike lanes that are actually good in places that people will actually use them in. Instead of making driving better by making everything else better, instead of making driving better by dumping even more money into it, make driving better by making everything else better. Reduce the incentive, the need to drive everywhere you go. The point is not to eliminate driving, but to give the freedom of more than just that option. This is great and all, but we live in Edmonton. How are we supposed to bike if it's freezing outside? This is Oulu, Finland. Its population is much smaller than that of Edmonton's, but at 200,000 inhabitants, it's not just some small town. Oulu experiences similar levels of snowfall compared to here, and has an even longer winter season than we do. The reason that people continue to cycle here is not because their citizens are more hardcore, but because the city of Oulu has better bike paths that are cleared more often. Toronto, which gets pretty minimal snowfall anyways, only starts plowing cycle tracks after there's been 5 centimeters of snowfall. Bicycle routes in Oulu are plowed within 3 hours with 2 centimeters snowfall. People bike here because it feels safe. It does not feel safe to bike in most parts of Canada. Cold and snow are an obstacle, yes, but it is nothing that cities in other parts of the world have not already conquered. In the school in Oulu, the majority of kids, that is 1,000 out of 1,200, still arrived by bicycle. That day was negative 17 degrees Celsius outside. Again, they're not stronger or have some sort of secret. It's just that their city allows them to live closer to school, and biking is safe and convenient. In conclusion, these suburbs and strip malls, they're expensive, they're bad for the environment, inconvenient to get to, and they're boring. If we build our cities with principles of good design, you take these undesirable places found all over Canadian cities, add transit where you can, and fill in the land with multi-use developments, increase the population density, integrate stores into the urban fabric, make the streets pleasant to be in. If we do all of those things, we'll make our neighborhoods more complex, more interesting, more affordable, and more walkable. We'll be able to turn the places where we live to places where we can thrive. Thank you.